as I did was only because I felt that what JC had set up was A, very good, and B, very important. And so it became part of my own philosophy and what I was trying to do myself. So, you know, it was very important that for me that I understood what was going on. The number of students that even since I've met since they've left have said to me they didn't really fully understand what was going on when they were there, but now that they've left and look back on it, they can appreciate it. Is amazing.
I think that's such an interesting comment, and that's certainly something that I picked up on. Is it Elaine, Steve, the teacher in Seattle, I think, who came back with a very comprehensive kind of assessment of the 73 speech and what went to her and so forth, and just echoing Will's earlier point, said, you know, I really didn't understand what was going on, or that this was not part of a big plan, but now it's very clear to me that everything was so carefully thought out.
Yes, that's Elaine, and she was class of 76, and was also there when Will was there.
That's right. I remember Elaine very well. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's quite extraordinary that you know, and even I myself, when I was first reading it, I thought, that's why we did this, or that's why he had that kind of particular part included in the program. That he really was very detail oriented, and yet you know, kind of projected this. It's just kind of a spiritual, philosophical thing, but it was very carefully thought out, well planned.
I think that JC had problems. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was only going to say, I think what was so interesting as a student is that it appears to me, from what I've heard from staff members, and certainly not from all, that he was very much kind of hands-off in terms of, you know, individual teachers and how they wanted to conduct their classes and approach curriculum and so forth. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I think that JC had a very hard time starting the school up and getting it going. And I got there when there were already 120 students. But he had a clear vision as to what he wanted out of the school, and was prepared to change things around in order to get what he wanted. I think that he also employed staff that he felt were on the right wavelength. And as a member of staff, you were very much on your toes as to whether you were pleasing JC or not, because you were also aware of the fact that on a number of occasions he'd given a few members of staff up to 48 hours to leave the school.
Really?
And so,
interesting.
Oh, yeah. That you, I remember the first time I heard that from Elizabeth Sen, I was astounded. But I think that she sort of put the fear of God into me as to, you better make sure that if you want to stay here, you better make sure that you're pleasing JC. He had little things. I mean, I remember that one of the things was that the telephones were to be answered within 3 rings. And that went from his office and the general office right the way through the school. He felt that it was not right to keep people waiting on the end of the telephone. And it was by doing certain little things like that, he instilled a sort of discipline amongst the staff, but without being, as you say, without being very hands-on. I found myself in a situation which was a bit surprising in a way. I was going up a lift with Austin Elliott one day, and he announced that he was leaving and that he'd recommended that I should become his replacement. Belvedere. And, you know, I wasn't even married at the time. And he basically said, you better hurry up and get married, Will, because that's what's the cards that are on the table. Well, now, my immediate reaction was to go and speak to JC. And I went and saw him and I said, you know, I'm supposed to be getting married in the summer. I can bring him forward to Easter if wife and family are happy, but is that really what you want? And in a word, he turned around and said yes. But now, I didn't really feel that he had much to do with me other than the original interview and 2 or 3 meetings that I'd had with him in passing, nothing actual, formal, I want to see you in my office or anything like that. It was always in passing. Then when he turned around and said that was yes, I said, look, I've got fairly clear idea as how I would go about this, but I'm going to need a certain amount of guidance. Are you prepared to give me that? Because I want to be sure that I'm doing the job in the fashion to which you want it done. To which he turned around and said, well, I wouldn't be asking you to do it if I didn't think you could do it. And secondly, I'm more than happy to discuss things with you and the way things should be done. And you should go and see Group Captain Watts and say to have the same conversation with him. Which is basically what happened. The first year I was housemaster, Group used to come and see me every Thursday afternoon. He'd walk into my office and shut the door and say, right, well, how's it going? What's going on and everything else? And we would have completely private and confidential chats about all the different things that were going on and different students in the house and so on and so on. We would go out, and he would leave the room having said what he thought, and then we would go into a housemaster's meeting, and he would behave as if he'd never heard a word of what we've been talking about. And JC was the same. Whenever I felt a little bit stumped, I used to just get in the car, go down to see JC and say, you know, what do I do with this one? 9 times out of 10, he used to say, stall for time. Stall for time, see how it works. Well, it was absolutely something I used to say to the prefect, but it was interesting that he came out with the same thing. We'll stall for time, let's just see how this pans out, keep me informed. You know? And again, he used some of the information that I know that he used some of the information I gave him to guide 1 or 2 other members of staff without actually saying where he'd got the information from.
Very interesting.
And that was a way in which he did things. And as I say, it was something that I'd been brought up with. That we kept our dirty linen at home and washed it at home and produced or presented the united front on the outside. And that was one of the things that I found out that I thoroughly enjoyed and liked about JC. It's the fact that you could have those conversations with him, be completely brutally frank and open about it, and he didn't score it against you in any way, even if it was something he'd like to hear. You know, so that was one of the things. I think the other thing about it is that he lost interest to a certain extent in the minutiae of the school. He wanted his staff and the master to get on with dealing that, and he was more interested in the philosophical and religious side of things in his latter years, and wanted to see the school heading in the right direction as far as that was concerned.